The sky above the capital shimmered with ceremonial lights, and the grand courtyard of the royal palace was packed with dignitaries, nobles, and curious onlookers. All eyes were turned toward the gates, where the royal family was expected to make their entrance. But amidst the grandeur, cloaked in shadows, one figure moved with calm precision. Dressed in a plain black uniform and barefoot on stone, the martial artist waited, blending in with the hired security. His hands hung relaxed, but his eyes never stopped scanning. The rhythmic beat of the royal drums masked the sound of his breath. Security was at its peak. Hundreds of guards posted across rooftops, balconies, and corridor checkpoints. Yet the black belt had trained for years in silence and solitude for moments exactly like this. He studied the rotations. He noted who paused too long at corners and who met whose eyes. A slight crack in the rhythm revealed the weak link, the youngest of the royal guard stationed by the west entrance. The boy wore his polished armor proudly, gripping his halberd with a stiffness that screamed inexperience. He was alone for just under 10 seconds between patrol overlaps. The martial artist moved, 3 silent strides, a pivot, and he was already in the guard's blind spot. One smooth breath and his body coiled like a spring. The kick snapped upward, heel first, striking the guard's jaw just below the ear. It was over before the sound even carried. The guard crumpled in a heap, helmet tumbling into the grass. The martial artist caught the body mid-fall, easing it down so not even the armor clinked. His expression never changed. This was precision, not malice. He slipped the gate code from the unconscious guard's wrist bracer and moved inside. The palace interior was warmer, lit with lanterns that diffused a golden hue across gilded walls and marble floors. No alarms, not yet. The music from outside still vibrated through the columns. A servant in white passed by him without a glance. The martial artist had memorized every hallway from a blueprint smuggled out of the archives months ago. He moved deeper into the heart of the palace, past the Hall of Histories, into the corridor of mirrors. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. He was a machine of discipline. Then a sound. Not a shout, not a command. It was the absence of noise, the sort of quiet that arrived not because nothing made sound, but because something was listening. He turned. A figure stood at the far end of the corridor. Not a soldier, not a royal. The silhouette wore no armor, no insignia. The mask covered the face entirely, a smooth plate with no visible eye holes. The black belt tensed, ready to strike first, but the figure didn't charge. Instead, it walked, casual, graceful, like someone meeting an equal. The martial artist shifted his stance. This was no ordinary guard. His training had covered dozens of styles, but something about the way this figure moved was foreign. Loose shoulders, subtle head tilt, weight balanced like a predator, no unnecessary motion. Without a word, the figure leapt forward and the fight began. Blows came fast. Fast enough that the flicker of their limbs barely registered between the pulses of the overhead lanterns. The black belt struck high, a spinning elbow, and the masked figure absorbed it with a sideways roll, answering with a palm strike that threw the martial artist off his feet. He landed hard but rolled back up, breathing sharper now. He'd faced champions, street fighters, even soldiers. But this was something else. The hallway offered no cover. Every inch was mirrored, every motion reflected 1,000-fold. The martial artist used that, watching for hints in the reflections, anticipating movement. A sweep kick nearly took the figure down. Nearly. The masked opponent bent backward in an unnatural arc, avoiding contact by inches before flipping forward into another strike. This time, the martial artist blocked with both arms. The impact vibrated through his bones. He knew something was wrong. His kick to the knee connected. But it didn't slow the figure. No sound, no grunt of pain. Just a pivot, another blow, another counter. The black belt was losing the tempo. He stepped back, and that was when the masked figure froze. Only then did the martial artist notice the edge of the throne room behind him, a glimmering doorway lined with ancient symbols. He hadn't meant to reach it so quickly, but the fight had drawn him off course. Still breathing hard, he turned toward the doorway, a single step over the threshold, pulling him into a room colder than the rest of the palace. A strange hum filled the air, low and vibrating through the soles of his feet. The masked figure didn't follow. It remained at the entrance, head slightly bowed, almost waiting. The martial artist stepped forward again, his footfall muted by the smooth obsidian tiles beneath him. At the center of the room was a plinth, and on it something glowing. His training had never prepared him for this. The air inside the chamber felt unnaturally still, thick with something that clung to the skin, not quite heat, not quite pressure. The martial artist's breath slowed without him realizing, drawn into the rhythm of the hum that pulsed from the relic on the plinth. It didn't glow in the way artificial lights did. It radiated. The object itself was shaped like an orb, rough, hewn, etched with patterns that seemed to move when stared at directly. He reached for it, hesitating just inches from contact, but a whisper of motion behind him made him pivot. The masked figure had entered. It moved soundlessly, no longer in combat stance. Its head tilted slightly, as though observing the room, not the intruder. The martial artist shifted position, placing the relic to his side, unsure if removing it would trigger a trap. He hadn't studied this part of the palace. It wasn't in the blueprints. It wasn't even supposed to exist. The masked figure finally took a step forward, and its gait had changed. No longer predatory, no longer poised to strike. It walked as though drawn to something deeper in the room. The martial artist tracked its every move, muscles taut, waiting for an attack that never came. Instead, the figure raised its left hand and pointed slowly to the ceiling. He followed the gesture. Above them, the ceiling wasn't solid stone as it appeared at first glance. It was translucent, maybe even fluid. Shapes moved behind it, shadows in constant orbit, circling like wolves. The hum intensified. The martial artist staggered slightly, pressing his hand to the side of his head. He felt it, some kind of frequency interfering with his balance, like being underwater but still breathing. His training had covered mind control tactics, even hypnosis, but nothing compared to this. It wasn't invading his mind, it was synchronizing with it. The masked figure walked to the edge of the plinth and knelt, not in deference, but as though decoding something in the floor tiles. The martial artist took a step back. He needed to leave to report, to escape, but his feet wouldn't obey as quickly as they should. The relic had tethered itself to his focus. He could feel it pulsing through his sternum now, not just through his ears. Without warning, the masked figure rose and removed its mask. The martial artist blinked. The face beneath was familiar, too familiar. It was his, not just similar, identical. The same scar on the right brow, the same slightly crooked nose from a break 3 years ago. The doppelganger stared back at him with calm, unreadable eyes, his own eyes. A wave of dizziness hit. He reached out to steady himself, his hand brushing the relic. The moment contact was made, the room erupted in motion. The ceiling above flared, light flooding down, refracted through the strange medium overhead. The plinth collapsed into itself like folding stone, dragging the orb downward. But it didn't fall, it descended with purpose, almost like it was returning home. The masked version of him, unmasked now, stepped aside and gestured toward the disappearing relic. A voice, identical to his own, spoke not aloud but directly into his thoughts. This wasn't a test of strength. The martial artist recoiled instinctively. His training had never included anything resembling telepathy. He tried to speak, but no words emerged. The voice continued, "You came for knowledge, but knowledge demands something in return." The lights overhead dimmed, and the hum quieted just enough for him to hear the beating of his own heart. He turned toward the chamber exit, wondering if escape was still possible, but something had changed in the corridor. Shadows had lengthened. The mirrored hallways now showed different reflections, possibilities, not realities. He could see himself in combat again, over and over, but not with victory. Each reflection showed defeat, but in forms he didn't understand. The copy of him began walking, not toward the exit but toward a narrow archway that had just revealed itself in the far corner. Behind it, more light, different light. The archway led into a descending spiral staircase carved directly into the stone beneath the palace. The walls grew darker with each step, not just in color, but in texture-etched lines that pulsed faintly, similar to the relic above, as if the energy had seeped down through layers of history. The air shifted again. It was cooler, metallic in taste, laced with something like ozone. The martial artist descended cautiously, his double just ahead, always just out of reach, but never vanishing completely. He could hear the whisper of bare footsteps, the rhythm unnerving in its mirroring of his own. At the base of the stairs, the narrow tunnel opened into a circular room, wider than the throne room itself, and much older. No lanterns burned here, yet everything was visible. The light came from the walls, hundreds of embedded relics, some shaped like the one from the plinth, others different, blades suspended in crystalline encasements, orbs swirling with faint constellations, flat stones inscribed with characters that shimmered between languages. The floor was smooth but not untouched. Footprints, some bare, some armored, dotted the dust. This place had seen others. In the center of the room stood a structure unlike anything above, a throne of sorts, but not for royalty. It was too angular, built from a black material that reflected no light at all. The double moved to its side, not sitting, but placing a hand on the armrest. The martial artist felt a sudden pull, physical and internal, drawing him toward the throne. As he stepped closer, he felt each relic in the walls thrum to life. Their light brightened. Their energy resonated with something in his chest. The hum returned, louder this time, but not external. It was inside him now. A pulse rocked the chamber, low and heavy, and every relic in the wall vibrated in response. The martial artist staggered, catching himself on the edge of a stone pedestal. His skin prickled. His thoughts slowed, condensed, sharpened. Time didn't stop, but it narrowed. The double spoke again, still without sound. "You entered to disrupt. You've uncovered instead." The martial artist tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. The words were there, the will was strong, but the rules of this place operated on something older than language. His instincts, sharpened by years of combat, screamed for action. But action felt irrelevant here. Every move echoed. Every step left residue. The throne began to shift. It didn't rise or fall, it unfolded, revealing a cavity beneath it. Inside was a small object, unlike the others, a mask, simple. Stone, gray, plain, no ornamentation, but it radiated heat. The martial artist stepped forward against instinct, reaching out again. His hand hovered just above it. No voice told him what to do. No thought guided him. Then the ground vibrated once more, and the reflections from the mirrored hallway above rippled through the walls of the chamber. They showed more than versions of him. They showed other intruders over generations. Fighters, scholars, thieves, each had entered this place. Each had touched the relic. Each had seen the double, but none of them had taken the mask. He hesitated, not out of fear, but out of the sudden understanding that this wasn't a reward. This wasn't a prize for defeating a guardian or reaching some hidden inner sanctum. This was a choice, one that would cost him something. He glanced back at the double, still watching silently, no longer echoing his movements, but waiting. The moment his fingers closed around the stone mask, the chamber reacted with violent clarity. Every relic embedded in the walls pulsed in unison, releasing a low, harmonic vibration that rattled the very marrow in his bones. A burst of light surged from the mask itself, not blinding, but infinite, filling the space behind his eyes with shapes, visions, and impressions that defied time. His body remained rooted in the room, but his awareness was yanked backward, upward, outward. He saw the palace above, not as it was, but as it had been, through wars, coronations, betrayals. He saw the royal line stretching back centuries, each monarch flanked not just by guards, but by figures in masks like the one now in his hand. And then he saw the cloaked figure watching him. It wasn't a reflection or a memory, it was present, standing just outside the chamber, in the shadows of the stairwell he'd come down. Tall, wrapped in dark robes that didn't ripple despite the vibrating air, the figure held no weapons, but it didn't need any. Its presence alone pulled the heat from the room, made the air heavy. Its face was obscured, but its attention was razor-sharp. Watching him, not the double, watching the mask in his hand, he spun to face it fully, but when he turned, it was already gone. No sound, no trace, only a faint swirl of displaced dust. Then the walls flickered again, this time showing surveillance feeds. He recognized the images instantly. Footage from security cameras in the palace above, the courtyard, the ceremonial stage, the guards. Except something was wrong. The footage jumped, time skipped. One moment showed him neutralizing the young guard, the next nothing. The video rewound, replayed. This time there was no intruder, he was simply absent. The feeds were being wiped in real time. Someone or something was erasing his presence. He stared at the screen, trying to track it. But the feed stuttered again, then went black. A single phrase appeared on the nearest wall, etched in light, "You were not here." Behind him, the double remained unmoving, but now its body emitted the same faint glow as the mask, not from its skin, but from beneath it. Like something was being revealed. The martial artist looked down at the mask in his hand. The heat had faded, but it still vibrated softly, like a heart beating out of sync with his own. He understood now. It wasn't simply a relic. It was a marker, a sigil of initiation. The cloaked figure's reappearance was sudden, this time directly in the chamber, on the opposite side of the relic wall. No sound had announced its entrance. Its presence didn't register through normal senses, but the martial artist knew it was there. The double raised its head in response but made no move to act. A thin line of shadow passed over the chamber's floor as the figure stepped forward, hands still hidden beneath its robes, and then it spoke. Not in sound, not in thought, but in pressure, in meaning. Others took the relic, you took the role. The martial artist tried to move, but his limbs were slower now. The mask in his hand had grown heavier, not physically, but symbolically. He felt it press against something inside him, like it was making a claim. The cloaked figure continued, "You are not chosen, you are marked." The words felt irreversible. He glanced toward the staircase toward escape, but it no longer led up. The stone steps now stretched into blackness, into a place that was not the palace, not anymore. His reflection in the mask blinked. He stared at the mask, heart thudding once, twice, then slowing. His own face, reflected in the dull stone, had changed. The eyes looking back at him were his, but not older, sharper, wiser, or broken. He couldn't tell. The blink had been a signal, not from within him, but from the mask itself, from whatever it now carried. He felt its awareness, dormant yet ancient, stretching through his skin like cold ink. Behind him, the cloaked figure raised a single hand, palm open, as if signaling a halt, not to him, but to something beyond the walls. And then he understood. He wasn't being erased from the palace's memory. He was being rewritten. His name, his record, his image, everything the world above believed about him, was unraveling, replaced by something else. Not forgotten, transformed, he had become visible only to those who moved in the same hidden current. The order, not the guards, not the royals, the watchers beneath the throne. The double, his double, stepped closer, and for the first time it knelt. Not in submission, in acknowledgement. Not all who entered were offered this moment. Most didn't make it past the mirrored corridor. Some turned back after seeing the first shadow. Others failed the silent duel. But he had followed the path, made the choice, touched the mask. Now the consequences were unfolding. The masked one behind the cloaked figure emerged, another, and then another. Silent shapes watching him, all bearing masks of their own, some cracked, some adorned with intricate carvings, some smooth and bare like his. Not a welcoming committee, not a tribunal, witnesses. The martial artist felt a tremor move through his chest, not from fear, not even from the weight of the moment, but from the bond now forming. Something ancient had seen him, and it would not unsee. The cloak parted slightly as the lead figure extended something wrapped in worn cloth. It floated midair before reaching his hands, heavy, rectangular. He unwrapped it slowly. A scroll. The seal on it was not royal, nor from any language he'd ever learned, but he could read it, every word. Every command, every rule. He looked up. The figure nodded once. A single gesture, a single choice.